Last offseason, Jim Harbaugh reshaped and reshuffled and reset that Michigan coaching staff. This season, he's doing the same thing to a certain extent, at least at the coordinator level, but not necessarily by his choosing. We're talking Michigan football here at the Voice of College Football. We've got Justin Rowe on the line from Blue by 90 podcast. Hey, Justin.
How's it going, Mark?
It's going pretty well. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. It's it was funny because I said on our podcast the other day, we were recording on Sunday, and was it Sunday or Saturday? I can't remember. And I said, well, thankfully this Jim Harbaugh saga is over, so now we can kind of take a breather and focus on basketball or some other sports. And 10 minutes later, the Josh Gattis news comes out, and we have to jump back on the podcast and re-record and do all that stuff. So the drama with Michigan football this offseason continues on.
Yes, the podcasting schedule for anybody out there that experiences this, you basically are, in your best interest to record the podcast, as close to air date as possible. Because there's just too many things going on, whether you're covering Michigan, and certainly they're near the top of the list, but really anywhere across the country these days with all that's going on from the coaching perspective, but the transfer portal and recruiting, it's just crazier than it's ever been. What is also crazy is Josh Gattis's departure to Miami. Some Miami fans took exception when I said he downgraded. I said you could look at it a few different ways. I said you could look at it as a lateral move because I can give you all the pluses at Michigan, which are more tangible. I can give you some pluses at Miami, which are more projected or, could happen in the future. Okay. But people took exception to that. That's fine. Anyway, I consider it a bit of a downgrade. I understand, though, that he's getting a pay raise, but what's most curious about all this, because we have seen some coordinators switch across the country, taking lateral moves or what could be considered downgrades this offseason, is the note that he sent to a number of the veteran offensive players about his time at Michigan and certainly some of the disrespect that he felt from administration.
Yeah, and I think so. The gist of the message was I didn't feel as appreciated as I would have liked from the administration here at Michigan. I hope his message to the players was don't be anywhere where you don't feel like you're wanted. So I don't know if there were some underlying things like he was trying to recruit some guys away from Michigan to Miami with him? Or is it really that he was just, hurt by what was going on there? And I think you go back to the last month and a half or whatever when nobody knew what Jim Harbaugh's future was. I have to imagine there were conversations with him and Ward Manuel saying, hey, am I the next guy for this head coaching job? That type of thing. I think that there were definite conversations about that. But then is he hurt because Jim comes back and now he's not the guy? Or was he hurt because he was never really considered for that head coaching job and he thought he would have? I don't know what went on behind the scenes there. There's rumors of both, of course. But I would lean towards the fact that up until the 11th hour, Josh Gattis probably thought that he had a pretty good job at the Michigan head coaching opening. And then all of a sudden, at that 11th hour, Jim Harbaugh calls Ward Manuel back and says, hey, I'm back. And now Josh Gattis is still stuck where, in the same spot that he was. Now, the thing is, that was a pretty good spot to be in if you're Josh Gattis. I think you're coming back with almost your entire offense plus a possible J.J. McCarthy to elevate that, that offense to the next level. And in my eyes, his path was perfect to be a head coach somewhere else, not next year, but the year after, right? If he comes back to Michigan this next year with a loaded offense, has another unbelievable year, he's not getting just the job offers or the job openings like at Virginia, which he was rumored to be at in this offseason. He's getting some pretty good Power 5 job offers in my mind. So I thought his path was like perfectly set up for him. And then all of a sudden it comes crumbling down. But I do think, to go back to your pay raise thing, I think he was a little bit hurt and not appreciated when Miami offered something. It sounds like Michigan did not want to counter or even match that. And he was like, well, so you don't think I'm that good of a coordinator then? And there was, obviously things went south from there.
Yeah, and not knowing what was said between the parties, appreciation. As soon as I read that, thinking, okay, I don't know anything about conversations or what could have been he could have viewed as a slight. That could go to money, meaning that yes, he sees that other coordinators are making more money. If he received, as you just stated, a pay increase at Miami and it wasn't matched. And number three, maybe even before this situation, an opportunity came up, winning the Broyles Award, just thinking, okay, I should receive some kind of bonus or pay bump because of that.
Right. Yeah. I totally see it in his eyes. He's like, what have I not done here how am I not gaining something here? Right. I could completely understand for him. And, I will say there are rumors of some personal things in his life that have caused some distractions for him. And maybe that changes mine too. As well as I've definitely heard some things where him and Jim Harbaugh butt heads a little bit too. There was definite changes over the past 3 years of who's calling the plays, who's doing this type of stuff. We've seen that go on, and Jim Harbaugh, we know, likes to have a lot of control. He likes to run his offense, that type of thing. So, there were all the rumors before of Jim Harbaugh has really let the reins loose, that type of stuff too. So it's just one of those things that it's tough to know all the things that went into it. But all in all, it's not a pretty departure for Josh Gattis here. Now it causes a lot of questions for what's in the future here in Michigan.
So Josh Gattis is not doing anything that's not the norm in the world of sports in regards to contract expectations. But this just kind of is one of my irritants when it comes to the sports world. It seems to be different than anywhere else when it comes to player or coach signs contract. Basically, when you sign a contract, you're exchanging a possible ceiling down the road, whether it be 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, for the security of the contract. Is what you're doing. You might be able to, if you continue to ascend, make more money if you went year to year, but you are trading some potential upside for security. But in the sports world, you have a good season and you expect some kind of renegotiated contract. You have a bad season, and if they don't fire you or let you go, it's not like the team is coming to you saying, yeah, you're not performing up to standard, although that happened with Jim Harbaugh. That's extremely rare. You're not performing up to standard. We're cutting your salary. So it doesn't work both ways. So again, Josh Gattis not doing anything that's not customary in the sports world.
Yeah, and I think that people probably read into things way too much. We all want to know, oh, what went wrong here? I think the first reaction to a lot of people in the media was, oh, it's all unraveling, right? Jim Harbaugh waited too long for his decision. Now it's all unraveling. Their D coordinator leaves, their O coordinator leaves, this type of stuff. First of all, the D coordinator leaving, Mike McDonald, that was a promotion that he well deserved, and it was, I think, in the plan the whole time. That had nothing to do with Jim Harbaugh waiting. The O coordinator leaving, I do think, had some things to do with Jim Harbaugh waiting it out and leaving his guys not completely in the dark, but there's uncertainty. If you're an assistant coach and you don't know if your head coach is coming back, no matter what he's telling you, you're kind of like, what's going on here. So there is some of that, but I do think that Michigan's going to be okay going in the future. They're going to be fine without Josh Gattis. And honestly, on the flip side, what a huge pickup for Mario Cristobal, in my opinion. Down there, that's about as good as you can get for a first year head coach at a university too.
And just looking at offense transition of what Josh Gattis produced at Michigan this past year, it seems to be a good fit because Mario Cristobal is a very much running game, offensive line oriented guy like Jim Harbaugh, and Gattis might be able to work with that and do something similar to what he did at Michigan, but then, implement all the frills and the creativity to get the speed guys in space and do that to complement the power running game. So it does appear to be a good fit there. Justin Rose here from Blue by 90 podcast. Check him out right there. You see his Twitter handle, Justin Rowe 92. All right. So Matt Weiss seems to be the offensive coordinator. I've seen this all over the place. And then you mentioned it as he seems to be the guy in line.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like he's going to step in there. I think he was a guy like Mike Macdonald who was probably a man in waiting no matter where he was going to go. He was going to get an old coordinator job in the next few years. And so now it just kind of works out that it's expedited and he steps into the role here at Michigan. This whole John Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh connection obviously has gone back, to their birth, right? But it's becoming lately, it's like Ravens and Michigan, they just trade guys back and forth. So Matt Weiss coming from the Ravens, he was with the Ravens from 2009 to 2020. So was there for a long time before he came over to Michigan. I mean, he bounced around. He was part of the defensive staff. He was a linebackers coach. He was a running back coach, wide receivers, QBs. So he's done it all. But I think he is a very knowledgeable 38-year-old guy, which is, Mark, in college football and now in the NFL as well, it's like if you can get a guy in their 30s to be your old coordinator, you're like, that's the cool thing to do, right? It's one of those things. So I do think he fits the mold well, and it's a good transition. Obviously the quarterback room is something that is very much on everyone's minds right now for Michigan. Is it going to be Cade McNamara or J.J. McCarthy going forward? Well, with Josh Gattis leaving, I think that Matt Weiss stepping in, definitely provides some consistency for those quarterbacks. For a guy like J.J. McCarthy coming up and learning the system, he's going to have, that consistency. They know the playbook now. It's not going to be a completely new transition. So I think that definitely goes into Jim Harbaugh's decision here.
There's been so many things going on the offensive side of the ball with Gattis stepping away and leaving that. Oh yeah, they still need a defensive coordinator. Mike Macdonald's been gone for a while now. So where do we stand there?
So it sounds like Jim Harbaugh had some interviews yesterday on Monday as well as today, Tuesday too. So they're in Schembechler Hall, I believe, this week trying to make a decision. I've been told that he wants to have kind of everything done by the end of the week and make some big announcements by the end of the week here. My bet is Michigan makes a classic Michigan move here and has a Friday 5 o'clock news dump so that nobody can talk about it on the radio and things like that. They love to do that. But in terms of who is coming in to interview, Jesse Minter from Vanderbilt is going to be the front runner, I guess. A guy who has also a bunch of experience with the Ravens. So it's one of those things where it feels like everybody that's coming to Michigan right now, he's getting John Harbaugh's blessing and wants to implement those guys. But I think an important piece to Jesse Minter is, again, the consistency. He knows the Ravens defense that Mike Macdonald was running at Michigan, so there's going to be not too much change there. I think that is what is at the forefront of Jim Harbaugh's mind when he's making these decisions right now. He doesn't want, think about a junior and a linebacker at Michigan. They're going from Don Brown to Mike Macdonald to somebody new now as the D coordinator. So three new D coordinators in 3 years. You definitely don't want a completely new system to come in. And obviously Mike Macdonald's defense worked pretty well. So that's the the thing that we're really thinking about here, especially with the Jesse Minter talk. But then there's Anthony Campanile. So he's right now a linebackers coach with the Dolphins. So he has been in and around the Michigan program in the past, and he's definitely been rumored to be there. He was rumored to be their D coordinator when Mike Macdonald came in as well. So him and Jim Harbaugh have a good relationship, I believe. He didn't end up getting that job, obviously, but this name keeps coming up. He's an up and coming guy as well that wants to make this next step. He was a linebackers coach for Michigan in 2019. So he left when Don Brown left as well. But it's one of those things that his name has been coming up as well. I'd say Jesse Minter and Anthony Campanelli it's between those two right now.
Please like the video, share these videos out on social media. You enjoy the content. We get some really good comments every day here. So you guys obviously enjoy the content. We appreciate that, but also share the videos out on social media because others will as well. And subscribe here and certainly track Justin on Twitter. Justin Rowe 92, Blue by 90 podcast. And a 2023 commit came in the last few days, a Michigan running back. 22nd rated running back in the nation, off to a good start in the recruiting for 2023, regardless of all the controversy and all the optics of the situation. The previous class was locked in as a top 10 class. The next class is off to a good start. And you've got some interesting tidbits on this running back.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, with these classes, which you're mentioning, it's kind of amazing, isn't it, that these classes that they're doing as well as they are. You think about not only does nobody know what's going to happen, but also all these other teams are negatively recruiting Michigan for this exact reason too. So I'm surprised there haven't been any flips, but actually it sounded like Cole Cabana actually flipped from Michigan State to Michigan. He was never actually committed to Michigan State, but grew up a Michigan State fan. He's from Dexter, which is closer to Ann Arbor than East Lansing, of course, but an in-state guy. Took a visit to Michigan State last week and then actually came in and committed to Michigan not too long after that. So a bit surprising when you think about everything that went into this. I have to imagine Mel Tucker is talking about, hey, you don't know who your head coach is going to be down there in Ann Arbor, and then all of a sudden he actually does commit to Michigan. So a good pickup. He's a 3-star right now on 247. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets bumped up to a 4-star at some point too. This kid is pretty raw, 6 foot 180. So he's got the height of a pretty solid running back, bigger than most, but he's going to be able to put on some poundage. Now we're talking about size. The biggest thing about him is his speed. 4.3 40 for this kid. So it's going to be that. I said to you right before we went on, I don't care how big you are or what's going on. If you can run a 4.3 40, they'll find a way to get you on the field. So in some of these new offenses, we'll obviously see what's going to happen with the O coordinator at Michigan, but it'll be really interesting to see how this guy can fit in the future. When you're thinking about the running back room that Michigan has had recently, Hassan Haskins moving on. Now it's going to be Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, who are a speed duo already. So you add this guy to the mix in the coming years, and it could be pretty fun for Michigan fans to watch.
Super Bowl Sunday's coming up. Michigan's got a proud history. There's one guy that's done pretty well there at the quarterback position. If you're looking at lists of, alma maters and Super Bowls, and a lot of those lists are going around this time of year, of course. There's one guy, Brady, that's done well. He's done well. Charles Woodson, Desmond Howard won an MVP. A lot of good Michigan ties to the Super Bowl. Without looking at it myself, and I hate to put you on the spot, is there any particular Michigan rooting interest in the Super Bowl because of former players?
Let me think. I'm trying to think right now. I got to look it up, honestly.
I actually posted a video running down the college teams with the most Super Bowl participants on the two teams right now, and I don't remember where Michigan was. They had one or two.
I know. Well, David Long is a starting corner for the Rams. I know that for sure. So that's a rooting interest. I mean, Michigan aside, but I know a lot of the state of Michigan is rooting for the Rams because they're the Detroit Rams now with Stafford at the helm. This is the closest that Detroit, I think, will get to a Super Bowl. But that's what I've seen more than anything. David Long actually did have an interception. That was in the I think it was in the championship round. He did have a pick 6, which was awesome. But Yeah, I'm trying to. Let me see. I'm taking a look here.
I
Oh,
thought
Chris
the
Evans.
angle, Chris
Chris
Evans.
Evans,
Okay.
yeah, former running back for Michigan. Chris Evans he's actually played a decent amount for the Bengals, which was surprising. I think a lot of people didn't know where he fit in. And obviously he had some struggles at Michigan as he rounded out his career. But they've had him as kind of a slot running back, slot guy that they utilize a decent amount. So there are guys on both sides.
I thought that the rooting angle was going to come against the Bengals because of being located in Ohio.
That might be true too. But here's the thing. I can't root against Joe Burrow. He's so likable and so cool. He's just got this X factor that it's hard to root against him.
It is. I'm rooting for the guy. But what about this? I don't know how much you've picked up on this, but his comments about Ohio State have ignited these two fan bases in both directions because he has tempered the Ohio State fans who have been like, he's our guy, he's a Buckeye,
Yep.
he's a da-da-da. He kind of brings that down to be like, well, I played at LSU, I accomplished everything at LSU. I'm an LSU football player. Basically, I don't think that can be debated. For any Ohio State fan that takes Joe Burrow as their own as being a Buckeye, no, he didn't play at Ohio State. Yes, he should be given credit. He was on the team, he was on the roster. He had a scholarship in his hand and he practiced, and yes, he contributed from that standpoint, but obviously his legacy, his legend, he was the number one pick in the draft because of LSU. So he's kind of tempered the Ohio State, but when asked or trolled by Michigan people who have kind of trumpeted those comments that have downplayed his Ohio State connection, he's countered with, I think the most recent was something about having 3 sets of gold pants and beating those bums up north. So he's played both sides of it to a certain extent.
He's smart. He's smart. Honestly, he's getting both sides there because I think the Michigan fans when he had the comments or whatever it was about Ohio, not going to Ohio State, and that he was something like he was glad he left there. I think Tom Brady said that to him in an interview back and forth or something like that. So that was where Michigan fans definitely took off, and they're like, "Yeah, screw Ohio State. Burrow doesn't own them." That type of thing. But obviously he does still have the gold pants, and he was in Columbus for a decent amount of time. So it's funny. I just find him as a likable character. He's been the underdog a lot and still somehow pulls it off, and then celebrates with a cigar in his mouth and just looks cool doing it. So it's just one of those things where it's hard not to root against him. Or it's hard to root against him. And I wanted to ask you this. Is this the Super Bowl? Like, I feel like neither team is hated at all. It doesn't feel, there's no like dynasty where like you want to see them lose or both quarterbacks are pretty likable. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see that. We've seen the Patriots so much for the last 20 years and people just getting sick of the Patriots. But beyond that, my son brought up something. He doesn't like the Rams because they've kind of bought their team. They're built on free agency, going out and getting Jalen Ramsey and Von Miller, and they seem to be a star. Odell Beckham Jr. They seem to be like the star-studded team that just kind of collects the stars, and he doesn't like that.
Okay, I can definitely see that for sure. I'm a little blinded by the Stafford thing over here. I'm a big Stafford fan. I was always a Stafford fan when he was here in Detroit, and felt like he didn't get the love for obvious reasons. They were never winning, very often. So it'll be fun to watch those guys though. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if any of these Michigan guys get a big play on the big stage. David Long will be one-on-one with with Jamar Chase at times, I'm sure, and that could be interesting. And then, if Chris Evans, if you get one touchdown, if you get that one pass, then all of a sudden you've got a touchdown in the Super Bowl, and you can kind of hang your hat on that forever. So it'll be a cool opportunity for both those guys.
when I make these connections between college football and the NFL, and then I lay it out kind of in the metrics and the statistics, I get a lot of comments back, feedback that doesn't really matter. What does that say? But when you put it all together, I got pretty much the same results as I typically get anytime I make any connections between NFL success, which obviously if you've made a Super Bowl, that's NFL success, and
Right.
college. And I got it again in adding up the rosters. SEC number 1, Big Ten number 2 in terms of players on the rosters, and then it's not even close with anybody else.
Really. That speaks to everything, doesn't it? There's obviously different things, because I think, the thing that when you go to Michigan specifically, Michigan has tons of NFL talent, right? But it hasn't always, meant wins for them or championships for them. They've won a lot of games, obviously, Michigan has, but they haven't, this is the first championship. So people talk about the relation there, but that means something, right? It means you get, the SEC is getting the best recruits, and so the Big Ten's up there too. But also, then you're developing your guys over the course of 3 or 4 years and making them into NFL talent. You think about what Michigan had in NFL guys the last few years. A lot of those guys are three stars. You think about a Ronnie Bell, who's about to probably be a preseason All Big Ten guy. He's a 2 or 3 star he was at. So I think it's cool to see these programs, develop these guys. But what you're saying is pretty telling of how college football goes year in and year out.
And that's the most players in the NFL as well on all rosters. SEC number 1, Big Ten number 2, and it's not close to number 3. Justin Rowe, Blue by 90 podcast. You got to check him out right there. And of course, on Twitter at Justin Rowe 92. Justin, we always appreciate the conversation. Enjoy the conversation. Enjoy the Super Bowl. And we will catch up with you soon.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mark.